Now we start Daf Lamed. And the Mishnah says, Shlosha achim shnaimem nesum shtei achios v'echad nosui nochus. So we have Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, three brothers. Reuven marries Rachel, Shimon marries Levi. I'm sorry, Shimon marries Leah. And Levi marries a woman we'll call her Sarah. So that Reuven and Shimon are married to two sisters, Rachel and Leah, two sisters. Reuven's married to Rachel, Shimon's married to Leah. And Levi's married to a fremda, as we'd say, to Nachus. And she's not related to the other two sisters, and we'll call her Sarah. Meis echad mibale ha'achis. Let's say Reuven dies, and his wife Rachel falls for Yibum to Shimon and Levi. Ukanas nasui nachus as isha. And Levi was Mekayim the mitzvah of Yibum, and he married Rachel. Keep in mind, Shimon doesn't have that option because Shimon is married to Levi, the sister of Rachel. Rachel is an erva of Achos Ishto. She doesn't fall for Yibum to Shimon. She only falls for Yibum to Levi, and Levi was Miyabim her. Now Levi dies. Now Levi had a wife, if you remember, named Sarah, the Nachris. Now he has another wife by the name of Rachel, who was originally the wife of his late brother Reuven. Now Levi dies, and he leaves two wives, Rachel and Sarah, who fall for Yibum to Shimon. But there's no Yibum to Shimon as far as Rachel is concerned. She's Achos Ishto. So what's the situation now of Shimon vis-a-vis Sarah Eshes Levi? Pashtus is Sarah becomes a Tsaras Erva, and she doesn't need Yibum or Chalitza. Harishona Yotza Mishum Achos Isha. So forget about Rachel. She doesn't need Chalitza. She doesn't need anything. She's P'tura min Chalitza min Yibum because she's Achos Ishto when she falls to Shimon, who's married to her sister Leah for Yibum. Is Yotza Mishum Achos Isha. Ve'ashniya. Now there's another wife that Levi had, the Nachris. We called her Sarah. Mishum Tzarasa. She's a Tzaras Ereva. Because Rachel and Sarah fell in one joint Nefilah for Yibum with the death of their common husband, Levi. And therefore we activate the principle of Tzaras Ereva. And since Sarah is an Ereva Machos Ishto, therefore, right, since Rachel, I meant to say, is an Ereva Machos Ishto, so therefore Sarah, the Tzara, is also out of the box as far as Yibum V'chalitza b'Toras Tzaras Ereva. So all this is in a case where Levi was Miyabim Rachel, Eshes Reuven. Also b'maimar v'meis, but what happens if Levi did not implement bia, meaning Yibum, with Rachel, Eshes Reuven, but instead he gave her a maimar, kesef or shtar, and then he died. So Rachel is what we call, she's called the Bailas HaMaimar. She receives a maimar. She doesn't need Chalitza or Yibum. When Levi dies and he leaves Rachel and his wife, the Nachris, Sarah, for Yibum to Shimon, Rachel doesn't need Chalitza or Yibum at all. She is the sister of Shimon's wife, Leah. Nachris, but what's the status with Sarah? Choletzes v'lo misyabemes. So watch what happens here. Since on a Doraisa level, Maimer is not Kona, so therefore, Sarah is not considered a tzaras erva. In other words, the status of Sarah as a tzaras erva to Rachel would depend upon recognizing and validating the marriage between Shimon and Sarah. But on a deraisa level, there is no such marriage because the Torah never had a possibility of maimah. So therefore, Sarah, has no relationship to Rachel insofar as Rachel received maimah, and on a Torah level, maimah is garnished. So therefore, it's clear that Sarah needs chalitza. Again, we'll discuss why Yibum is not an option. But first of all, just to clarify why she's absolutely dependent upon chalitza to allow her to marry someone in a shuk, and the answer is because she's not a tzaras erva on a doraisa level. Because to create and forge that status of tzaras erva, she would have to have been married to Levi. But Levi did not implement Bia, meaning full-fledged Yibum, with Rachel before he died. He only gave Rachel a maimah. So you cannot consider Sarah a tzaras erva because on a doraisa level, Rachel is not Eshes Levi. A tzaras erva means you're the tzara to the wife of the deceased. Just 1 second. Right. So was Rachel the wife of Levi the deceased? Not really, because Levi only implemented maimah. Now we go to the din of Yibum. Yibum is out because on a D'Rabbanan level, Sarah is a tzaras erva. Why? Because the Rabbanan recognized the maimah between Levi and Rachel. Rachel is an erva to Shimon, and Sarah is a tzaras erva. So Yibum is not possible on a D'Rabbanan level. Chalitza, on the other hand, is a requirement on a D'Oraisa level. And that's called Choletzes V'lo Misyabebes. The Gemara says, Taima ti Ovid Vei Maimar, Holo Ovid Vei Maimar, is Nochris Yibume Nami Miyama. What happens is that if we're medayek very carefully in the language of the Mishnah, we see clearly that the reason why Sarah is excluded from Yibum and Shimon cannot be Miyabim Sarah is because Levi had done a Maimar to Sarah. Had he not done a Maimar, then Sarah would be Misyabemes. Or Rav Nachman's also there saying Zika. If there would be a din of Zika, then the Yevamot would be considered Ishto Shel HaYavam, and Afilu B'chad Acha, she's not considered Zkuka to any one of them, even B'chad Acha. So even if the Yevamah is Zkuka L'Yibum to one Yavam, and there's no other Yavam who could be Miyabimha, she's not considered Ishto, because we're holding Ein Zika. So Rachel is Zekuka Levi. Levi is the only one of the brothers who has a possibility of being Miyabimha. Shimon is out of the picture because he's married to Leah, her sister. And we're not going to consider Rachel to be the wife of Levi based on Zika to generate a din of Tzaras Erva and exclude Sarah from Yibum to Shimon, so Shimon could be Miyabim, Sarah. That's how we're learning this Mishnah. And now we get to the second of three Mishnayos on the daf, on the Amud. Shlosh Hachim Shnayim Nesuim L'Shtei Achis Echad Nasi L'Nochos. So far it's exactly the same scenario. Reuven and Shimon are married to Rachel and Leah, and Levi is married to Sarah. Meis HaNasi Nachris. Now Sarah falls for Yibum to both Reuven and Shimon. V'konas echad mibali achios es ishto umeis. Now, let's call him Reuven. Reuven, with the death of Levi, is miyabem eishes Levi, that's Sarah. Umes. Now Reuven dies. So Reuven now has two wives. He has Rachel, that was his first wife, his original wife, and then through Yibum, he has another wife by the name of Sarah. So now Rachel and Sarah, who are both married to Reuven, fall for Yibum with the death of Reuven to Shimon. Because Levi died originally, and Reuven was Miyabem Sarah Eishes Levi, in addition to his wife Rachel. Now Reuven dies, and his wives Rachel and Sarah fall for Yibum to Levi. Obviously, Rachel is out of the picture here because Levi is married to Rachel's wife. So Rishona Yotzes Mishum HaChosisha. That's crystal clear that Rachel is out of the picture completely because Shimon is married to her sister Leah. Nia. And now we talk about Sarah, who is the other wife, the Nachris wife of Levi. When she falls for Yibum, is Mishum Tzarasa. I mean, that makes 100% sense because what happened here? When Levi died, Reuven was Miyabem Sarah Eishes Levi. So Sarah is surely a Sarah to Rachel, Reuven's wife. And therefore, when Reuven dies and Rachel and Sarah fall for Yibum to Shimon, Sarah's status is that of its Sarah's servant. This is not like the previous discussion that we had about Maimar. Now we're talking about full-fledged Yibum. Because Reuven was Miyabem Sarah Eishes Levi. Okay, now what happens if neither of the two brothers, neither Reuven nor Shimon, was Miyabem Nachris, meaning Sarah, Eishes Levi. But also b'maimar umes. So Reuven gave Sarah, after Levi's death, kesef or shtar, and then Reuven dies, and he has now, so to speak, two wives. He's got Sarah through Maimar, and Rachel was his original wife. They fall for Yibum in front of Shimon. So as a result of the Maimar, Sarah, on a Drabanan level, became a Tzara of Rachel, who's the sister of Leah, and therefore she's an Erev Achos Ishto, as far as Shimon is concerned. So Rachel, the wife of the late Reuven, now Reuven died second, right? First Levi died. And after Levi died, Reuven did a maimar to Sarah Eishes Levi. Now Reuven dies. Is Rachel is Yotzes below Chalitza, she's Achos Leah, and that's an Erev Achos Ishta. What about the Nachris? Choletzes v'lomas yabemes. And here we had a long discussion. We'll just review it very quickly. That we need chalitza to be mafkia the zika that was generated by Levi, the first husband, Minat Torah. And the Torah doesn't recognize Maimar, so you have to be mafkia the zika of Levi, and therefore she needs chalitza. But lo mitzvah bemes, because on the Drabbana level, she has a status by virtue of the Maimar of Tzaras Erva. Just 1 second. Right, because Reuven was married to Rachel, and he did a mimer in Sarah after Levi died, and Sarah fell for Yibum. That gives Sarah a quasi status, an ambiguous status of Tzaras Erva. I mean, on the Derais level, she's not at Tzaras Erva because all she got was Maimar. But on the Drabbana level, we recognize the Maimar. So the Gemara says, Hasu Lamali, why do we need this Mishnah? Hainu Hach. There's no Chiddush in this Mishnah that we don't know from the previous Mishnah. And I'll prove it to you with a Kolshken. Hashta Uma Hasam in the previous Mishnah, Dachos Isha of the Yavam, the only surviving Yavam. Havyit Sarah, Lin Nachris. He became on a Drabbana level through Maimar a tzara to the Nachris, who was married to a husband on a Torah level earlier. So she's the main wife. For example, Rachel, the sister of Leah, and Leah was married off to Shimon. Rachel becomes a tzara mirabbanan to Sarah Eshes Levi, and Sarah is married to Levi on a Doraisa level, is therefore, and I quote to you, Roy Shalo Yavo Hatafel V'Yasar Alaika. The Amrit, and nevertheless the Mishnah says that Nachris Asura Lisyabe, because of the Maimar that was done to Hatzara, Achos Ishto Shalayavam. Now, the Maimar generated a status of Tsara, again, Mirabanan, a status of Tsara to Achos Ishto, to the Erva of the Yavan. And therefore, Sarah is excluded from Yibum to Shimon because she became a Tsara to Rachel. All that on a Drabbana level as a result of Maimar. Is Kolshkein Hacha, much more so here, did Nachrizu have Yitzara Lachos Isha. She became a Tzara Mirabbanan through Maimar, which is Tafel, to Achos Isha, because Achos Isha was Nesua Labaila to Shimon Minat Torah Mikodem, and she's what we call Ishto HaIkris. For example, let's say Sarah, the wife of Levi, who became a Tzar Mirabbanan to Rachel, who is the sister to Leah, who is the wife to Shimon, and that's all on a Doraisa level, is Lo Kolshken, surely Yavo Ha'ikar V'Yasar Al HaTafel. And Sarah the Nachris now becomes Asura, like Rachel, who is the sister of Leah and is an Erva, because she now becomes a Tzaras Erva through Maimon. So what exactly is our Mishnah coming to be Mechadish? So the Gemara answers, Tana Hach, Tana Bereisha. The Hach, he says we should switch around the order of the Mishnayos. This second Mishnah was really studied first. Again, it wasn't organized first, but in the Masaras HaTorah, the transmission of Torah, it came first. And the svara was that in this case, the achos Eishes HaYavam, which is again the Ikar Nesuin, has the koach to generate an Isser on the Yavam HaNachas. V'hach, and the earlier Mishnah, where the Nachris was the Ikar Nesue Ames, Chazia Le'tera. In other words, he thought at the beginning that we could be matter the Nachris L'Syabim because the Tafel does not have a power to generate an Isra on the Ikar, the Sharia. Sharia means he did not list it in the order that it was studied. L'chei lo shones dina k'dei she'atiru oso l'syamin. V'hodar, Chazir, he thought l'sura, that we should generate an Isser even on the Nachris, who has an Asuin Gemurin mitchila, and that's because of Achos Eishes Yavam, who is, brought together with us, so to speak. And at the end of the day, Tzarasa he, and she's Asur ala Yav Mishum Erva, is Aidi the Chavivile Aktima, since it was Chaviv alav. This chidush, this din that the Tavel generates an Isser on the Ikar, therefore, when he organized the Mishnayos, he did it in that sequence where that which was Chavivale, this chidush that was Chavivale, should come first. Mishnah Zulo Zazam in Koma. And he never changed this Mishnah. Once he had the Mishnah, because he had the Mishnah before he had the previous Mishnah, he left it in its place. Okay, now we get to the third Mishnah. Oh, there are actually four Mishnahs on this page. The third of the four. Shlosha Achim. There are three brothers. Shnaim em Nisuin l'shtei Achios. The Echad Nasri l'Nochris. Beis Echad Mibalei Achios. V'kanas Nasri l'Nochris es Ishto. So what do we have over here? We have Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. And Rachel and Leah. So we have Reuven marrying Rachel, Shimon marrying Leah, and Levi marries Sarah, who's not related to Rachel or Leah. Now Reuven dies, and Rachel falls for Yibum to Levi, and Levi's Miyabim, Rachel, Eshes, Reuven. Now, Shimon's wife Leah dies, and then Levi dies, and his two wives, Sarah and Rachel, fall for Yibum to Shimon.
No, here's my thing. I really want it.
So again, let's just emphasize this. Levi is married to a woman named Sarah, and with Reuven's death, Levi is Miyabem Rachel, Eshes Reuven. So now he has two wives, Rachel and Sarah. Shimon is married to Leah, the wife of Rachel, and now Leah dies. So at the moment that Leah dies, Rachel is no longer an erva to Shimon. She's no longer Achos Ishta, because his wife died. Now Levi dies, and Sarah and Rachel fall for Yibum to Shimon. Look, at this point, Shimon should be Miyabim Rachel. He says, Ein din Rachel kishar achos isha shemuteres labaila. L'chora Rachel now should be a perfect candidate for Yibum. He says, no. Harezu, meaning Rachel, asura olav olams. And why? Because of a principle, whole v'nesra olav cha achas. Because remember, in the sequence, Reuven died, and Rachel fell for Yibum to Shimon and Levi. And at that point, since Shimon at that moment in time was married to Leah, the sister of Rachel, Rachel is an erev of achos ishto. She's knocked out of Yibum as far as Shimon is concerned, and therefore she picks up the status of Eishes Achiv. Once she's already Eishes Achiv, then Hol v'Nesra Olav Shah Achas is Asura Olav Olams. If there was no possibility at the time of the nefila for the mitzvah of Yibum to be fulfilled because she's asura la yavam, the asura. And now she goes back to be the regular erev of Eishes Ach. Right? The Torah was only matir Eishes Ach b'makom Yibum, but if there was no Yibum, because she was asura ala yavam, then she retains the status of Eishes Ach shelo b'makom mitzvah. So the Gemara asks, "My kamashmal and Tnina, you're not telling me anything, Rav Yehuda, in the name of Rav, that I didn't know from the Mishnah." So what happened in the Mishnah? This Yevama was achos ishto shala yavam, and now the Yavam's wife dies. She's no longer achos ishto. Arezu asur olav olamis over nesra olav cha'achas, as we saw in the Mishnah. Once she was originally asur olav, we can't remove that iser, even though his wife dies. So why do I need the statement of Rav Yehuda Merav? The Gemara answers, "Ma'u detema." I could have said, "Hani mila." When does the din of the Mishnah apply? That's only heicha delo echazila. That means there was no heter yivu from the nefila rishona, right? Shelo hutra yevama, shelo hutra yevama mea iser shenesra machmas nefila rishona. So in other words, Rachel fell for Yibum because of Reuven, and she's the sister of Leah, who's the wife of Shimon. After Levi was miyabem Rachel, and again he's married to Sarah, is then Shimon's wife Leah died. So we still have an Iser of Yibum even though now she's falling for Yibum because of Levi. But it doesn't matter. Originally on the first round, she fell for Yibum to Shimon because of Reuven's death. And at that point, Rachel's status was that of an erev of achos isha. And therefore, we apply the principle of Nesra olav sha'achas, Nesra olav olamis. Aval hecha di chazi olav in a fila rishona, ema tishteret. So let's say Leah, the wife of Shimon, dies before Levi was miyabem Rachel. So in such a case, the marriage of Rachel, the original marriage of Rachel to Reuven, could be mater hafayibum to Shimon, because because Shimon's wife Leah died before Levi was miyabim Rachel. So at that very moment that Leah dies, at that point Rachel, Ashes Reuven, is muteres liyibum to Shimon. And therefore, Ema Tishtere, we would have had a Havamina that Rachel could be muteres l'syabim l'Shimon. A Mashmalon, now we need Rav that kol sheb'shas nefila nesra olav sha'achas is eina niteres li'olav. So what does that mean, sha'achas? One second, I just got to go over the case one more time. Is Levi so again, the moment that Reuven died and Rachel fell for Yibum the minute that Reuven died, and at that point Shimon's wife Leah was still alive. So Gemara asks now, Hanami Tamina. This also we have in a Mishnah earlier on Daf Lamed Beis, She Asura, and that's Shnei Achim Nisuim l'Shtei Achim Sumeis Echad Mehem. The Achakach Mesa Ishto Shal Hasheni. Arezu Asura Olamis Hol V'Nesol of Sha'achas. So in other words, the moment that Reuven dies, Rachel is already considered an erva to Shimon as an achos ishto, and even though Leah, Shimon's wife, died subsequently, it doesn't matter. Once there was an iser b'sha'achas, she's nesrol of olamis. So Gemara says, "Ma'od the same ahosam." I would have said over there, "Hu de idchile b'hai beiseli gamre." Right? Why is Rachel asura olamis even though subsequently Leah, Shimon's wife, died? Because when Reuven dies, then Rachel is completely excluded from Yibum. Because there's only one Yavam, Shimon, and it's, as far as Shimon is concerned, Rachel's status is out of Ashes of Achos Ishto. So therefore, even when Leah, the sister of Rachel, dies, and as far as Shimon is concerned, Rachel is no longer Achos Ishto, but nevertheless, before the death of Leah, Rachel's status was that of an Isa. She was Achos Ishto, Aval Hacha. But here we have a case where there are three brothers, two of which are married to two sisters, and one of them died. Right? So Reuven, Shimon, and Levi are brothers. Rachel and Leah are sisters, and Reuven marries Rachel, and Shimon marries Leah. And now Levi marries Sarah, right? She's an alien woman, right? She ain't a crow. Now Reuven dies. And now we're talking about Rachel. Right? Rachel is not excluded from the mitzvah of Yibum. She falls for Yibum to Levi, who's married to Sarah's and Nachas. I might think in such a case, Migu de Chazi Lahai, Nosei Anochris is Chazi Nami Lahai. I mean, we have to understand the lumdus of it, but basically what he's saying is that since Rachel, with the death of Reuven, falls for Yibun to Levi, and she's Ru'uyah Libun, she's already in the parsha of Libun, of Yibun. That's going to somehow weaken the Erev of Eshesach, so that now, when Leah, the wife of Shimon, dies, Rachel now becomes included in the mitzvah of Yibum to Shimon. And we're not going to apply the principle of Nesrol of Sha'achas because there wasn't a feel of Rachel for Yibum in front of Levi. Mashmalon, now we need the klal of Rav, who says that any Yevama who is Asura Sha'achas is any Teres Leolam, even in a case where Rachel as Yevama becomes Muteres li Nase l'Shimon with the death of Leah, because lo hutra lo b'shas misas Ruvain baila, because that heter with the death of Leah only came subsequent to the original Nephila. And that leads us to the Mishnah at the end of Daf Lam. Okay, but we'll have to pick this up another time because we ran out of time. Okay, then, thank you so much, and have a great day.